My wife noticed the metal box before I even put the car in park. We had been on the road for 6 hours, coming back from helping our daughter move out of a third-floor apartment with no elevator, which is a sentence that tells you everything you need to know about the condition of my knees that afternoon. I was thinking about the mail pile, the lawn, and whether the milk in the refrigerator had crossed the line from questionable into hostile. Then, Linda put one hand on the dashboard and said, "Why is there a utility box where my planters used to be?" I stopped the car halfway up the driveway. At first, my brain tried to make the scene into something normal. A delivery maybe, a temporary box, a contractor had left equipment in the wrong place, something boring and fixable. But the thing at the lower edge of our driveway was not temporary. It was a gray metal cabinet about 4 feet tall, bolted to a fresh square of concrete. There were orange spray paint marks still visible on the pavement. A thin saw-cut trench ran from the curb, across the lower apron of the driveway, and into the concrete pad. The cut had been filled with dark patch material that did not match the rest of the driveway, so it looked like someone had drawn a black scar across the place where we turned into our own garage. 2 blue ceramic planters that Linda kept there were gone. Not moved, gone. Linda stared at the cabinet for a few seconds, then looked at me with the very calm expression she uses when she is about to become less calm. "Did you order a locked metal box while I was carrying boxes down 3 flights of stairs?" she asked. "Only if I did it in my sleep," I said. She got out first. I followed more slowly because my back had made a formal complaint somewhere outside Knoxville. The cabinet had a small padlock on the front and a laminated notice zip-tied to the side handle. Clean font, HOA logo. The kind of notice that tries to look official by using words nobody says out loud. Northridge Community Infrastructure Access Point. Please do not block or tamper with this unit. Thank you for supporting neighborhood reliability. Linda read it twice. Neighborhood reliability, she said. Apparently. On our driveway. That appears to be the reliable part. She looked at the missing planters, then the saw cut, then the cabinet. I am going inside before I say something that becomes evidence. That was Linda. 33 years of marriage had taught her that the first 10 seconds after discovering someone had cut into your driveway were not the best 10 seconds for official statements. I stayed outside. I walked the driveway slowly. The cut started at the curb, crossed the part of the apron where our right tire passed every day, and ended at the new concrete pad. Whoever did the work had cut cleanly. It was not sloppy. That almost made it worse. Sloppy would have looked like a mistake. This looked planned. There were still tiny curls of concrete dust along the grass edge. A strip of our lawn had been pressed flat where equipment had probably sat. One of the sprinkler heads near the curb was cracked, and where Linda's planters had been, there were 2 pale circles on the concrete, clean outlines surrounded by dust, like the driveway itself was showing me what had been removed. I had owned that house for 9 years. I knew every uneven spot in that driveway. I knew where water collected after heavy rain. I knew exactly how far to swing wide when backing out, because the mailbox post leaned a little toward the street. It was not a grand estate. It was a 3-bedroom house in a neighborhood with maple trees, too many leaf blowers, and an HOA that mostly sent reminders about trash cans. But it was ours. And somebody had cut into it while we were gone. The first thing I did was not call a lawyer. It was not call the police. It was not march down to anyone's house. I took pictures, wide shots from the street, close shots of the saw cut, the cabinet, the padlock, the laminated notice, the missing planter's clean circles, the cracked sprinkler head. I photographed the tire path from the garage to the street because anyone who drove a regular-sized car could see that the cabinet sat close enough to make the turn awkward. Then I went inside. Linda had put the mail in 3 piles on the kitchen table because, even angry, she sorts. Anything from the HOA? I asked. 2 pool reminders, 1 newsletter, and a warning about holiday wreath size from November that somehow got delivered in May. Nothing about cutting our driveway? Shockingly, no. I checked my email. Nothing. I checked the HOA portal, which I disliked using because it looked like it had been built during the same era as dial-up internet. No message, no notice, no architectural request. No maintenance announcement directed to us. There was, however, a community email sent 4 days earlier. Subject: Northridge Infrastructure Reliability Upgrade Complete. I opened it. Dear residents, we are pleased to announce that the Northridge Community Infrastructure Access Point has been successfully installed to support long-term service reliability for the West Frontage Corridor. Please avoid blocking the access unit and help us maintain clear service availability for approved contractors. There was more, a lot more. Phrases like coordinated improvement, proactive board action, and shared neighborhood benefit. It did not mention our driveway. It did not mention our address. It did not mention that the West Frontage Corridor was apparently the lower corner of the Harpers' private property. Linda read over my shoulder. They announced it like they opened a hospital wing. A very small hospital wing with a padlock. Where are my planters? That was the question that moved me from confused to focused. Linda's planters were not expensive. They were big blue ceramic pots she had bought at a garden center on a day when we were supposed to be buying mulch and nothing else. She planted rosemary in one and lavender in the other. Every summer, delivery drivers cut the corner too tightly, and every summer, those planters protected the edge of the driveway better than any sign would have. They were not decorations to us. They were a little boundary, a polite one. Someone had removed the polite boundary and installed a locked cabinet. I called the HOA management number first, because at that point, I was still trying to be reasonable. A woman at the front desk answered and transferred me to the community manager, who transferred me to the board president, because apparently this project had been important enough for the board president to own personally. Her name was Marlene Voss. I knew Marlene the way most people know their HOA board president. I had seen her at annual meetings, heard her say homeowner partnership several times into a microphone, and once watched her correct a man for using the phrase speed bump when the approved term was traffic calming feature. She answered with a bright voice, "Mr. Harper, you were back from your trip." That was the first small thing that bothered me. Not hello, not how can I help. You were back from your trip. We are, I said, and there is a locked utility cabinet bolted to my driveway. There was a small pause, not long enough to be guilt, long enough to choose a phrase. Yes, she said, that is the Northridge Community Infrastructure Access Point. We are very pleased the installation was completed ahead of the contractor window. It is on my driveway. It is located along the West Frontage Corridor, she said. I looked out the kitchen window at the gray box. Marlene, that corridor is my driveway. She made a soft sound that I think was meant to be reassuring. I understand why it may feel that way from a homeowner perspective. Linda, who was standing close enough to hear, slowly turned around and walked out of the kitchen. That was wise. I wished I could have followed her. It does not feel that way, I said. It is my driveway. Who authorized someone to cut it? The board approved the reliability upgrade at the April working session. Did I approve it? The board has authority to coordinate shared infrastructure improvements that benefit the association. What permit number was issued for cutting into the driveway? Another pause. The contractor handled the installation details. Then I need the contractor scope, the permit number, and whatever recorded access agreement you believe allows a surface cabinet on my property. Marlene's voice softened into something almost patient. I think we should step back and review this at the community level before turning it into a documentation exchange. Documentation exchange. Someone had cut a trench across my driveway, poured a concrete pad, bolted down a cabinet, removed my wife's planters, and left a laminated sign telling me not to tamper with it. But the risky thing, apparently, was a documentation exchange.
"Send me the documents," I said. "Let me talk with management and get back to you. Today. I will do my best." We hung up. Linda came back in with 2 glasses of water and set one down in front of me. How was the community level? Very level. Did she say where my planters are? No. Then I am not at the community level yet. I went to the hall closet and pulled down the blue file box. Every house has a box like that if the owner has learned one hard lesson. Ours was labeled closing, insurance, property. I had not always been organized. Years earlier, a fence company working next door had marked 3 holes on our side of the line, and the only reason that got corrected quickly was that I still had our survey from closing. Since then, I kept records like a man who had seen what happens when people guess. I spread the folder on the dining room table. Survey, deed, closing disclosure, plat map, utility easement exhibit, county parcel printout, old emails from when we had widened the driveway by 2 feet with proper approval and permits. The survey was clear. Our property line ran along the front edge of the lot, with the public right-of-way ending several feet before the place where the cabinet now sat. The lower corner of the driveway was inside our parcel. Not close, not ambiguous, not the kind of thing where 2 reasonable people could stare at a map and blame the printer. The cabinet sat inside our property. Then I found the utility easement. This was the one document Marlene might have been leaning on, whether she understood it or not. There was a recorded utility easement on our property. It was real. It had been disclosed at closing. But it ran along the east side yard, not the driveway. And the language allowed underground service lines, maintenance access by utility providers, and temporary entry for repair. It did not give the HOA authority to install a surface cabinet on the driveway. It did not give the HOA authority to cut concrete. It did not even name the HOA as the beneficiary. Linda sat across from me, reading the same page. So they found the word utility and stopped reading. That is my working theory. Can I write that in the margin? Please do not alter the evidence. The next stop was the county permit portal. Our county's website looked like it had been designed by someone who believed drop-down menus were a test of character. But after 15 minutes and 1 password reset, I found the permit search. I searched our address. Nothing recent. I searched the HOA name. Pool fence repair, clubhouse roof, irrigation backflow replacement. Nothing about driveway cutting, utility cabinet, concrete pad, right-of-way work, or electrical conduit. I searched by street name. Nothing. No permit, no inspection, no site plan. That did not automatically prove the work was illegal, but it made Marlene's confidence much more interesting. At 5:18, our doorbell rang. Ray Loomis stood on the porch holding a folder and wearing the expression of a man who had been waiting for us to get home. Ray lived across the street and 2 houses down. He had retired from the Postal Service, which meant he noticed vehicles, schedules, and people who claimed they had permission to stand where they were standing. Ray did not gossip in the usual way. He cataloged. "You saw the mailbox blocker," he said. "The what?" He pointed toward the driveway. "That contractor truck blocked my mailbox for an hour and 16 minutes last Tuesday. I had time to develop feelings about it." I invited him in. Ray placed the folder on the table like he had prepared for a hearing. Inside were printed photos. Contractor truck, orange cones, 2 workers cutting the driveway. The gray cabinet still wrapped in plastic on a trailer. One photo showed my blue planters sitting on the grass near the curb. Linda picked up that photo. "They were alive when you last saw them?" Ray nodded solemnly. The rosemary looked concerned. What happened to them? One of the workers loaded them onto the trailer after lunch. I asked if the homeowners knew. He said the HOA had emergency access approval. Emergency, I said. That is what he told me. He also said they needed to finish before you got back, because the board wanted the access point active by the weekend. I looked at the photo of the truck. The company name was visible on the door. Brightline Site Services. Under that was a job number written on a magnetic placard. Ray tapped the picture. I took that because he was blocking the mailbox. I did not know I was also becoming useful. Linda said, "Ray, you have always been useful. Tell that to my sons." Ray's timeline filled in the first real shape of the story. The crew arrived Tuesday at 7:40 in the morning, cut the trench by 9 o'clock, set conduit before lunch, poured the pad that afternoon, mounted the cabinet Wednesday. Marlene came by Wednesday evening with a woman from the management company. They took photos. Thursday morning, the HOA email went out. Did Marlene say anything while she was here? I asked. Ray thought for a moment. She told the manager it looked more professional than the temporary access plan. I remember that because temporary access plan is a phrase people use when they are about to spend other people's money. That line stayed with me. Temporary access plan. Not utility easement, not permit, not owner authorization. Plan. After Ray left, I wrote everything down. Not because I thought I would forget, but because stories change when they stay in your head. Dates, times, names, exact phrases. I wanted all of it somewhere stable. Then I emailed Marlene. Marlene, as discussed, please provide by noon tomorrow, 1. The permit number for the driveway cut and cabinet installation at my address. 2. The recorded easement, access agreement, or owner authorization allowing installation of a surface cabinet on my driveway. 3. The contractor's scope of work. 4. The location where my 2 blue ceramic planters were taken. Until those documents are provided, I do not consent to the cabinet remaining on my property, or to any contractor entering my driveway for further work. I attached photos, the survey page, and the easement exhibit. Linda read it before I sent it. You were very restrained about the planters. I am saving that for the sequel. The next morning, Marlene did not send the documents. Instead, the entire neighborhood got another email. Subject, please keep infrastructure access clear. Dear residents, as many of you know, the board recently completed an important reliability improvement serving the West Frontage Corridor. We have received questions about access, and we want to remind residents that community infrastructure supports all homeowners. Please do not block, remove, alter, or interfere with any access point while the association completes final coordination with vendors. Linda read it at the kitchen counter. Final coordination with vendors, she said. Is that what we call trespassing now? Only if you coordinate first. The email did not name us, but it did not need to. Within 2 hours, a neighbor I barely knew waved from his car and shouted, "Hope your internet thing gets fixed." Another texted Linda, asking if we were the ones blocking the infrastructure upgrade. By noon, the issue had moved from our driveway into the neighborhood rumor system, where facts go to lose weight. That was the moment I stopped treating it like a mistake. Mistakes get corrected quietly. This was being packaged. The packaging got worse that afternoon. At 3:20, a white van pulled up near the curb and stopped with its hazard lights on. 2 men got out wearing reflective vests. One of them walked straight toward the gray cabinet with a key ring in his hand. I was in the garage sorting through the old permit folder, so I saw him before he touched the lock. "Can I help you?" I called. He looked surprised, but not guilty. That told me he had been sent there with confidence, which was becoming a theme. "Routine access check," he said. "For what?"
He looked at the cabinet, then back at me. Service node. Who requested it? Association. I walked down the driveway, slowly enough that nobody could accuse me of charging at anyone, but fast enough that he understood I was not inviting him to continue. This cabinet is on my private driveway, I said. I have not authorized access. The second worker stayed near the van and pretended to check his phone with the intensity of a man hoping not to become part of a legal conversation. The first worker frowned. We were told it was an HOA access point. You were told wrong. He held up both hands a little. I'm not trying to get in the middle of anything. Then please do not unlock that cabinet. To his credit, he did not. He took a photo of the cabinet, a photo of my house number, and stepped back toward the van. You might want to call the association, he said. I have. Yeah, he said, glancing at the saw cut. I figured. After they left, I added another note to the timeline. Outside vendor attempted access after homeowner objection. No owner authorization. No work performed. It felt ridiculous to write that sentence about my own driveway, but that was what the situation had become. The HOA had not just installed a cabinet. They had created a reason for strangers to arrive at my property with keys. Linda came out holding the folder of mail. Was that another community benefit? Routine access check. To the thing we did not approve. Correct. She looked down the street where the van had disappeared. I am going to say something that may sound dramatic. Go ahead. I do not like people having keys to mystery boxes on our driveway. It did not sound dramatic. It sounded exact. That evening, we moved Wendy's car to block the lower apron, not touching the cabinet, but making it impossible for another van to pull in and act like the place belonged to them. I took a photo of that, too. The whole week had turned me into the kind of person who photographed his own parked car from 3 angles. I did not enjoy that version of myself, but he was useful. The next morning, a note appeared in the HOA portal under our account. Please avoid obstructing association infrastructure during active vendor coordination. No name attached, no signature, just a portal note sitting there like a little accusation. I downloaded it as a PDF. Linda watched me save it. Do you have a folder for that? I have a folder for everything now. That is either attractive or worrying. It can be both. I wrote back through the portal. Please identify the recorded authority, permit, or owner authorization allowing association infrastructure on this driveway. Until then, our vehicle is parked on our own property, and no vendor is authorized to enter. I kept it that short because the longer I wrote, the more likely I was to include the phrase mystery box, and I was trying to remain useful. I spent that afternoon drafting a formal demand letter. It was not long. I did not threaten lawsuits. I did not call anyone corrupt or incompetent. I stated the facts. The cabinet was on our private property. The driveway had been cut without our consent. The recorded easement did not authorize a surface installation at that location. No permit appeared in the county system. The HOA had 7 days to remove the cabinet, restore the driveway to county standard, replace or reimburse the planters, and provide all records relating to the work. I sent it by certified mail, email, and through the HOA portal, because I wanted 3 different ways for them not to say they missed it. Marlene replied at 8:43 that night. Mr. Harper, the association understands your concerns. However, the board acted within its responsibility to maintain infrastructure that benefits the community. The access point location was selected based on contractor recommendation and legacy service patterns. We are willing to discuss reasonable beautification measures, including replacement landscaping around the cabinet, to better integrate it with your driveway area. Linda read it, then looked at me. She wants to put shrubs around the evidence.
That is one interpretation. What is a legacy service pattern? I think it means they don't have a document. She pointed at the line about contractor recommendation. Then call the contractor. That was why I married Linda. She could be angry and practical at the same time. I did not call Brightline Site Services pretending to be anyone else. I called as the property owner.
I gave the address, the job number from Reyes' photo, and said I needed the permit reference for a cabinet installed on my driveway. The woman who answered put me on hold twice. When she came back, she sounded cautious. The permit was being handled by the association, she said. Do you have a permit number in the file? I do not see one attached here. Do you have a scope of work? I can send the public work summary to the site contact. I am the property owner. That created another pause. The association is listed as the client. The work was done on my driveway. A longer pause. Let me check with my supervisor. At 4:12, an email arrived. I do not know if it was supposed to come to me. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe someone in that office realized the job file had become uncomfortable and wanted a record that they had not hidden it. I have no idea. Attached was a one-page work order summary. The important line was halfway down. Install HOA access cabinet at homeowner driveway frontage. Saw-cut driveway apron for conduit route. Permit by association. Owner coordination by association. I read that line 3 times. Homeowner driveway. Permit by association. Owner coordination by association. That was the first time I smiled. Not because it was funny, because it was clear. Marlene had been using soft words like corridor, access, reliability, and legacy pattern. The contractor had written down the plain thing, homeowner driveway. The next morning, I called County Code Enforcement. I expected a voicemail maze. Instead, I got a man named Daniel Reyes after 2 transfers. I explained the situation in the shortest version I could manage. Private driveway, HOA cabinet, saw cut, no permission, no permit found. Recorded easement in a different place, contractor work order. He did not sound surprised. That was both comforting and depressing. Email me what you have, he said. I sent the survey, easement page, photos, permit search screenshots, HOA emails, demand letter, Marlene's reply, Reyes photos, and the contractor work order. 20 minutes later, he called back. Are you available this afternoon? Yes. I want to look at the site. At 2:30, Inspector Reyes pulled up in a county vehicle. He was not dramatic, no hard stare, no speech, no performance. He carried a tablet and a clipboard. He wore sunglasses he took off before shaking my hand. Show me what changed, he said. That was exactly the right question. I walked him down the driveway. I showed him the saw cut, the patch, the pad, the cabinet, the cracked sprinkler head, and the missing planter circles. He crouched near the curb and looked at the cut line. He measured from the edge of pavement to the cabinet pad. He compared it to the survey. He opened the permit portal on his tablet and searched again himself. I do not see a permit for this address, he said. Neither did I. And you did not sign an owner authorization? No. Did any utility contact you directly? No. Do you have service trouble this was supposed to address? No. He photographed everything. Not quickly, methodically. Cabinet front, side label, pad bolts, saw cut, patch, notice, tire path. He asked me to forward the Brightline work order to the email printed on his card, even though I had already sent it to the office. I want it in this inspection thread, he said. That sentence made me like him. Before calling the HOA, Reyes asked one more set of questions. They were simple, but they showed me the difference between a neighbor argument and an inspection. Was the driveway usable before this work? Yes. Did the work change your turning path? Yes, not completely, but enough that my wife has to swing wider to avoid the cabinet. Any damage besides the cut? Cracked sprinkler head, missing planters, grass compression. The patch is uneven at the lower edge. He crouched and ran 2 fingers over the edge of the patch. Did they leave a restoration notice? No. Any door hanger? Any county card? Any utility notice? No. He wrote each no down separately. That mattered to me. In my head, all the missing notices had become one big absence. On his clipboard, they became separate failures. Then he asked, "Did they identify this as emergency work?" The contractor told my neighbor they had emergency approval. What was the emergency? No one has told me. Reyes looked at the locked cabinet again. Do you currently have working power, internet, water, and sewer? Yes. Any outage reported to you? No. He made another note. It was strangely calming, watching someone reduce the fog to individual questions. Not because I knew what he would decide, but because the questions were finally the right size. Did they have a permit? Did they have owner authorization? Did the easement cover this location? Was there an emergency? Did the work damage private property? Those questions did not care how polished Marlene's email had been. Then Marlene arrived. I had not called her. Inspector Reyes had. He told me he preferred to speak with all parties while he was on site, if possible. Marlene came in a white SUV with the HOA manager, a younger man named Trevor who always looked like he was about to apologize for a printer jam. Marlene carried a binder. Trevor carried a tablet and the expression of a man who had recently learned the binder might not be enough. Marlene greeted Inspector Reyes with her full title. Marlene Voss, President of the Northridge Homeowners Association Board. Reyes nodded. Daniel Reyes, County Code Enforcement. No title contest, just facts. Marlene looked at me, then at the cabinet, then back at Reyes. We are hoping to resolve this cooperatively, she said. The board approved this installation as part of a reliability improvement for the west frontage corridor. Reyes looked at his clipboard. What permit authorized the cut into this private driveway? Marlene blinked once. The contractor coordinated the installation under the association's infrastructure authority. I am asking about the permit for cutting the driveway. Trevor tapped on his tablet. Marlene said, This is not really a driveway project. It is an access point connected to community infrastructure. Reyes turned slightly and looked at the black patch line crossing my driveway. The driveway was cut. It was not a question. Marlene adjusted her binder. Yes, but only as necessary to complete the access route. What permit authorized that cut? Trevor's tablet tapping slowed down. Marlene said, We would need to confirm whether the contractor pulled a separate permit. Reyes made a note. Do you have owner authorization? The board approved the project. The property owner. The board's position is that this area is a service corridor. Do you have a recorded easement that allows a surface cabinet here? Marlene opened the binder. I could see the first page from where I stood. It was a printed copy of the same easement exhibit I had sent her, which meant she knew exactly what document we were about to discuss. She pointed to the page. There is a utility easement recorded on the property. Reyes accepted the page, read it, and asked, Where is the easement area? Trevor zoomed in on the tablet. I did not say anything. There are moments when the best thing you can do is let the map be rude for you. Trevor said, quietly, It appears to run along the east side yard. Reyes looked at the cabinet. This cabinet is on the driveway frontage. Marlene said, The contractor advised that this was the most practical access location. Practical is not the same as recorded. Ray later told me he heard that from across the street and almost applauded. He was supposedly watering his begonias at the time.
Those begonias received 40 minutes of water that day. Reyes spent another 20 minutes on site. He asked Marlene for the board approval minutes, the contractor agreement, any owner notice, any utility request, and any permit documentation. Marlene said she would gather the relevant materials. Then Reyes did something small that changed the temperature of the entire conversation. He placed one hand on the cabinet and said, "Until this is reviewed, no further work should be done on this installation." Marlene said, "Residents need access maintained." Reyes looked at the padlock. Access to what? No one answered quickly. That was the problem with invented urgency. Eventually, someone asks what is urgent. After they left, Linda came outside with 2 iced teas. She had watched through the front window because she said standing outside would have made her face too informative. "How did it go?" she asked. He asked for the permit, and they gave him a direction. A direction? East Side Yard. She handed me the tea. "That is not where our driveway is." "No." "Good. I was worried geography had changed while we were gone." The official notice came 6 days later. It was addressed to the HOA with copies to us and Brightline Site Services. The county found 3 violations: unpermitted alteration of a residential driveway apron, installation of a surface utility cabinet outside the recorded easement area, obstruction and encroachment on private property without owner authorization. The remedy was not vague. Remove the cabinet, remove the pad and related surface components, restore the driveway to county standard, submit restoration photos, and request re-inspection. Pay the assessed fines and inspection fees. Provide a corrective statement from the contractor explaining how work began without verified permit or owner authorization. Linda read the notice at the dining table. They forgot replace planters. That will be my personal addendum. Make it polite. I will describe the rosemary respectfully. The notice also explained something I had not known before. Driveway aprons in our county were not treated like ordinary private concrete once they connected to the public road. If you cut one near the right-of-way, the county cared about drainage, slope, load, visibility, and whether the repair would hold under regular vehicle use. That was why the permit mattered. It was not a paperwork trophy. It was how the county made sure somebody did not create a weak patch, a drainage problem, or a hazard at the street edge. That detail changed the way several neighbors reacted. Before the notice, a few people had treated the whole thing as a personal dispute between us and the board. Annoying, maybe, but not their business. After the notice, people started looking at their own driveways. They started asking what else the board had approved under committee language. One neighbor remembered a drainage trench behind the pool. Another asked whether the new camera pole near the walking path had a permit. A third wanted to know why the reserve study had listed infrastructure planning but not cabinet removal. That is how trust actually breaks in a neighborhood. Not with one big explosion, with people quietly realizing the process they were told to trust had skipped the boring steps that protected them. Marlene sent a board statement 2 days later. It said the association was reviewing the county's interpretation and remained confident that the project had been undertaken in the community's interest. It also said residents should refrain from speculation while the board worked with professionals. Ray forwarded it to me with one sentence. Speculation is what they call math before they release the numbers. He was right. Nobody had released the numbers yet. Marlene did not email the neighborhood that day, but someone else did. By 9 o'clock the next morning, a resident had forwarded the county notice to the community discussion list with the subject line, "Is this the infrastructure cabinet?" That was when the story left our driveway completely. People who had ignored the first 2 emails suddenly had questions. How much did the installation cost? Who approved it? Was reserve money used? Why was there no permit? Was the contractor insured?
Could the county fine the HOA daily? If the cabinet served the community, why was it locked? If it was a utility access point, why had no utility company signed the notice? Ray sent me one message. The begonias are thriving. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday. I almost did not go. I am not someone who enjoys HOA meetings. Nobody enjoys HOA meetings, except the person who asks whether the minutes should say adjourned or concluded. But Linda wanted to go, and Linda had lost 2 planters, so we went. The clubhouse was fuller than I had ever seen it. Folding chairs came out. People stood along the back wall. Marlene sat at the center table with Trevor on one side and the association attorney on the other. The attorney had the posture of someone billing in 6-minute increments while wishing he had been called 6 weeks earlier. Marlene opened with a statement. She called the cabinet situation an unfortunate administrative misunderstanding related to infrastructure coordination. She said the board had acted in good faith to improve service reliability. She said the county notice was being addressed. She said the association remained committed to transparency. Then Ray raised his hand. Marlene looked like she considered pretending not to see him, but Ray has the arm of a man who delivered mail for 32 years. It stayed up. Yes, Mr. Loomis. Ray stood. When you say administrative misunderstanding, do you mean cutting Mr. Harper's driveway without asking him, or do you mean getting caught after? The room made the sound rooms make when people try not to laugh because an attorney is present. Marlene said, I would not characterize it that way. Ray nodded. How would you characterize a saw? The attorney leaned toward Marlene and whispered something. Trevor took over part of the explanation after that. He said the contractor had been told the association would provide access approval. He said management believed the board had confirmed location authority. He said the board relied on a preliminary infrastructure map. That word preliminary did a lot of work. A woman in the second row asked how preliminary became concrete. Trevor said the map had been used for planning purposes only. The woman said, then why did planning purposes have a padlock? That one got a real laugh, even from people who had been trying to behave. The attorney stepped in after that. He explained, carefully, that the association was not admitting liability beyond what had been stated in the county notice, and that the board would comply with required corrective measures while reserving its rights. Reserving its rights sounded impressive until a man near the back asked whether the association had reserved the Harpers' rights before cutting their driveway. Marlene's face did not change much, but her hands tightened around her pen. I did not speak for most of the meeting. That surprised a few people. One neighbor turned around and whispered, "Aren't you going to say something?" I shook my head. By then, the documents were saying enough. When public process is finally working, the homeowner does not need to perform anger for the room. The permit search, the easement map, the work order, the county notice, and the cost estimate were all sitting in the packet. I had spent a week gathering them so I would not have to stand up and sound wounded while people decided whether my driveway mattered. Linda did speak once. It was near the end, when Marlene said the board regretted that the installation had caused confusion for adjacent homeowners. Linda raised her hand. It did not cause confusion, she said. It caused a hole. No one laughed that time. That was better. Another man asked how much the installation cost. Trevor gave the number. The room got quieter. Then he gave the estimated removal and restoration cost. The room got very quiet. Then the attorney explained that fines and inspection fees were still being calculated. That was the silence you get when people realize a bad decision has become a line item. Marlene tried once more to explain that the board had been trying to benefit the community. I actually believed that part, in the narrowest possible sense. I do not think Marlene woke up one morning excited to damage my driveway. I think she believed that if a project had enough official-sounding words around it, the small problem of asking permission would become unnecessary. That is the kind of mistake people make when they spend too much time in committees and not enough time reading the document attached to the committee packet. At the end of the meeting, the board voted to suspend the infrastructure committee pending review. Marlene voted no. Everyone saw it. The cabinet came out the following Monday. Brightline sent a different crew. Older supervisor, fewer words. They removed the cabinet, cut out the pad, pulled the conduit back to the curb, and filled the trench correctly this time. A driveway contractor came 2 days later to resurface the lower apron so the patch would not sit there like a permanent accusation. Inspector Reyes returned for the final sign-off. He looked at the work, checked the slope, took photos, and handed me a copy of the closed inspection notice. "Keep that with your property records," he said. "I have a folder." I suspected you might. Linda came out carrying 2 new planters, same blue, slightly larger. She set them near the driveway edge, not exactly where the old ones had been, but close enough to make her point. Reyes looked at them and said, "Those are not in the right-of-way." Linda said, "I checked." He smiled for the first time. The HOA reimbursed us for the planters, the sprinkler repair, and the driveway cleaning we had paid for before the resurfacing. That part took 3 emails and 1 invoice labeled "Replacement of Removed Homeowner Property," because I had learned that plain labels matter. Marlene resigned as board president at the next regular meeting. The official reason was personal commitments. The unofficial reason was sitting at the lower edge of my driveway, where 2 blue planters now guarded the turn like ceramic witnesses. For a few weeks, neighbors slowed down when they passed our house. Some waved. Some looked embarrassed, though most had done nothing wrong, except believed the first official email they read. One man stopped while I was taking the trash cans back and said, "I thought it was a utility thing." "So did they," I said. He nodded, then looked at the planters. "Those new?" "Replacement infrastructure." He laughed harder than the line deserved, but after that month, everyone needed something to laugh at. The driveway looked normal again by the end of summer. The color blended, the grass along the edge recovered. Linda's rosemary came back in the new pot, which she considered a personal victory and mentioned often. What stayed with me was not the metal cabinet. It was not even the saw cut. It was how easily confident language had almost replaced permission. Community access, shared reliability, west frontage corridor, legacy service pattern. All of those phrases sounded important, right up until Inspector Reyes asked for the permit. That was the whole story, really. Not that an HOA made a mistake. People make mistakes. Contractors misread maps. Boards misunderstand documents. Neighbors disagree about access. Most of that can be fixed with a phone call before the saw comes out. The problem was that nobody called. Nobody knocked on our door before we left. Nobody mailed a notice. Nobody asked where the easement actually ran. Nobody checked the permit record. Nobody wondered whether the people who owned the driveway might have an opinion about cutting it. They treated permission like a decorative step. And once the cabinet was bolted down, they tried to treat our objection like the inconvenience. Linda said it best the night after the final inspection. We were standing in the driveway with the garage door open, looking at the planters, the repaired concrete, and the place where the gray cabinet had been. "They could have asked," she said. "They could have. We probably would have said no. Probably. But at least no would have been free." That was the part Marlene never seemed to understand. No is not the expensive answer. Pretending you do not need to ask is the expensive answer. Ray walked over while we were still outside. He looked at the new planters, nodded approval, and handed Linda a small rosemary plant in a plastic cup. "Backup infrastructure," he said. Linda accepted it with the seriousness it deserved. Then Ray looked at me. "You know," he said, "for future reference, if anyone ever blocks my mailbox and cuts your driveway on the same day,
I am charging consulting fees. You earned them. I will accept coffee. So we sat in the garage with the door open, 3 folding chairs facing a perfectly ordinary driveway. No cabinet, no laminated notice, no official phrase trying to turn private property into a community corridor. Just concrete, planters, and a folder in my office with the survey, the easement, the work order, the county notice, and the final sign-off. Linda calls it my driveway museum. I call it proof that the quietest document in the room can still be the loudest thing when somebody finally reads it. And every time we leave town now, Linda points to the planters before we back out and says, "If those are gone when we get back, I am calling Ray before I touch a suitcase." Honestly, I think Ray would appreciate that.